how do we show people that prioritizing is intentional and a conscious decision-making process, now rather than being reactive and just letting life take over them? Now, how do we make that super clear to people? Because we come across it so often, and it's obviously a real blocker for people. But now, what can you think of an analogy or a story or a metaphor for how we can make it super clear that this is something that needs time and needs attention?
Well, one of the analogies you can use is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because everybody understands it,
Hmm.
right? Say, where in that level is this one particular thing? I am usually a little more brutal because when we are need to pare priorities down to define what they actually are, I usually said, okay, you have a 7 of them. So if I put a gun to your head, which is the one you would drop? They give you one. And guess what? We're gonna do it 4 times until we end up with
Yeah.
3. And generally we end up with a 3 that really matter. Right? And then maybe sometimes there is a combination, there is a process. I think that it is on the onset of really understanding. And I think that one of the issues here that we have to be conscious about as coaches is that the word priority gets really overused. Hello there, and welcome to another episode of CardCast, the podcast when we pick one of the leadership cards just like these, and then we just talk about it as two coaches might. Sometimes we bring a guest, but today we don't have one, so we'll just shuffle the deck and see what comes up.
Prioritization. This should be a good conversation, I feel. So I didn't have time to do it. Now, that's a bit of an excuse, isn't it? That's a bit of an excuse, but we hear that a lot from CEOs and from leaders, not just CEOs. It's a phrase that is used and overused far too much.
Oh,
And
I wondered if you would bring it up. Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'm casting my mind back to a quote from Dan Martell: "Don't prioritize your schedule; schedule your priorities." And such a few words has a huge meaning. So, what is it about prioritization that we get wrong so often? Now, we often don't prioritize the things that need prioritizing, and that, in a nutshell, is the problem. Now, we get taken up by the whirlwind, we get taken up by the day to day, and those things that we said were really important at the beginning of the quarter, at the beginning of the month, somehow we don't prioritize them. So we
You use the
prioritize the
word
less important things.
you use the word whirlwind. Have you read 40X recently? Because that's the big point, right? It's like the whirlwind does
Absolutely.
the
Yeah, yeah,
job, and then we,
yeah,
and there, that's great. That's a great book on the concept of prioritization from a particular direction, picking the one thing that matters and doing
yeah,
it, right?
yeah.
So
40X, the
you,
four disciplines of execution. Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Mm.
You've said a couple of things that all of them require some kind of reaction. So when I hear I didn't have time to do this, I said, stop right there. Learn a new way of expressing yourself. I prioritized something else,
Hmm.
right? Because this didn't happen to you. You made a choice not
Yeah.
to do this.
Hmm.
You prioritized something else. And it could have been sleep, and that would have been healthy, or it could have been your health, it could have been the fact that you went to the hospital. But let's acknowledge the agency you have over your own time, because if you don't have it, then what the hell are you doing? Right?
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
that is a super important notion. So I didn't have time. No, I used my time differently. I
Yeah.
prioritized something else. Own it. Right?
Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
Going
And
to
what
Dan
was so
Martell.
important?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was so
Uh,
important that you prioritized that over these really important things?
well, that's sort of a second level, right? Because we use this naturally. We use this excuse of not having time. It's almost like a microaggression sometimes. Like, like, I don't have time for that. I remember a CEO I started working with. I was like, "Are you a reader?" "Oh, I don't have time for that." I said, "Okay. So the first thing we need to do is we need to make time for you to read. So here is a book. Read it, and when you finish, then call me. Don't want to talk to you before that, right? Uh, because you have to prioritize. So that takes us to Dan Martell and the scheduling your priorities rather than prioritizing your schedule. So what is the difference? Prioritizing your schedule is what we do naturally. Oh, this is the stuff it's front of me today. This is what I have time for. And then if I have left time, maybe I'll do something. Scheduling your priorities means, hey, this is what I am planning to accomplish this quarter. I need to assign resources to it. And the primary resource is my own time. So why wouldn't I put in a calendar that I am going to do that? Right? We talked about this in a meeting prep. Like if you have a big meeting scheduled, you probably need a time to prepare it. So just block it in your calendar and make it defensible, right? Make it sure
Yeah.
that it actually happens. Because if you
Mhm.
just let it, yeah, I'm going to, the chances of success tank dramatically, for lack of a better word. But if you say, hey, this will take 18 hours of my time to do. I have 13 weeks and it's actually fine. So I'm going to budget, 2 hours a week for the first thing. Then I'm going to take a break.
Yeah.
Like, you need to be intentional about that. And
Yeah.
that's what Dan Martello is talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
the,
I
the,
block
the
out.
whole thing.
Yeah, I block out my calendar from Monday to Friday, 7 in the morning until 7 in the evening. But I'm also putting nice things in there. If I'm going for lunch, there is a block in my calendar that says lunch. Now, if I'm going paddleboarding, there's a block in my calendar saying paddleboarding, but it's still in my calendar. I have prioritized the things that I want to do that day, that week, so that everything by the end of the week, as much as can be done, gets done. And
Yeah.
if you're not intentional about that, about scheduling your priorities, then it just doesn't happen. The other tasks just expand to fill the time that you've got.
Well, that's one dynamics that happen. The other one that I'm sure that you are familiar with is too many priorities. Right? We've seen it usually early working with clients at the first time, or like you are doing your first thing and people show up. I have these 12 priorities for this quarter. No, you don't. Right? Or if you do, you're not gonna get them all done, right? Unless
Absolutely.
here is a
Mhm.
plan of how to do it, right? What happens? Um, this brought me
How
back
do
to go ahead.
how do we show people that prioritizing is intentional and a conscious decision making process now rather than being reactive and just letting life take over them? Now, how do we make that super clear to people, because we come across it so often, and it's obviously a real blocker for people? But now, what can you think of an analogy or a story or a metaphor for how we can make it super clear that this is something that needs time and needs attention?
Well, one of the analogies you can use is Maslow's hierarchy of needs because everybody understands it,
Hmm.
right? Say, where in that level is this one particular thing? I am usually a little more brutal because when we are need to pare priorities down to define what they actually are, I usually said, okay, you have a seven of them. So if I put a gun to your head, which is the one you would drop?
Mhm.
They give you one. And guess what? We're gonna do it 4 times until we end up with
Yeah.
three. And generally we end up with a three that really matter. Right. And then maybe sometimes there is a combination, there is a process. I think that it is on the onset of really understanding. And I think that one of the issues here that we have to be conscious about as coaches is that the word priority gets really overused.
Yeah. Hmm.
Right. And the same thing, if everything is priority, nothing really is, it takes us back to Incredibles and everybody's special, but nobody is. you know, it's exactly the same logic. So we need to figure out like what really, really matters, get a commitment from the rest of the team, because it also means that we need to help. So we really need to say, okay, this is what is important. And it doesn't matter what level we are talking. Are we talking the strategic priorities? Are we talking that? Or are we talking the
Hmm.
fact that I really need to go paddleboarding with my daughter? I don't. It would be a pathetic look. I have a really bad balance. But using that as an example,
Yeah.
I think that's a great example of scheduling your priority. Like, I am going to do this and I am going to have that, and I will not allow something else to jump into the calendar
Hmm.
and take over that resource that I dedicated to this particular piece.
Because I'm thinking back to the work we do when we are, running, annual planning and quarterly planning sessions. It doesn't take much from being a coach to get a group of people to actually come to a point where they agree on the relative priorities of three, four, five, no, never more than that priorities. That we always get to a general consensus. Doesn't mean that everyone agrees, but generally people agree. When we have three, four, five things, now you use if I put a gun to your head, which one would you drop? And you do that several times to get down to a smaller set. When I do the opposite, and I'm sure you may well do this too, is if you could only do one thing of all those things up on the wall, which one would you do? Now, normally groups come to an agreement about which one of those is the most important. And it might take a bit of debate, and you might sort of put the most important one at the top and then gradually decreasing priority on the way down, and it might swap around a bit. But you normally come to a point where the group agree on which is the one thing. And then from there, it's a lot easier. Now, once you got the one thing, if you could only do one thing, if you had to get rid of all of the others apart from one, which one would it be? You normally get to a point.
Yeah. I just find the gun to head method easier. There is something in the psychology of, okay, what is the thing that is the easiest to get rid of, rather than saying, oh, which is the one that really trumps them all. It's a slightly different cognitive process. I don't quite understand it, but from my experience, I find it easier. The debates are faster to get to it, right? And especially if you have somebody who is really trying to do that, then you have the conversation with them, and you see how everybody around the room understands. Like, oh, I don't know if this one or that one are the most important, but when I say, hey, if you can do only one of them, what's going to happen? Which one you're going to get rid of? Like, once you get to a smaller number, you can do that. But I think that the paring it down to a manageable, I think that finding the most important one among 5 to 7, it's too hard. Among 3, maybe, right?
Yeah.
I have no science behind it. This is just anecdotal experience. Yeah.
Different coaching techniques. Now I can see a use for both of them, both ways.
Yeah.
So ultimately, really, what we're saying is, it's really important to keep the main thing the main thing. Now, as has often been said, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing.
Yeah, I haven't heard that before, but yes, it makes total sense. So, if you look at it, so we have two issues. We don't set up the priorities right. We are being too, hey, of course we can do all that, but, because you didn't schedule it, you're not actually looking at the resources that it will require. Second piece is that every time we decide to do something, we need to realize that at the same time, behind the scenes, subconsciously, unspokenly, we are deciding not to do something else. Everything has an opportunity cost. That helps, realizing this helps. Okay, this is the most important thing, which means what are we willing to sacrifice to make sure that it happens? There's another version of the gun to head type of situation, right? Like, you can do that all. Imagine you can do that all. So what it doesn't mean we won't try, doesn't mean that we won't understand that, but we need to have, because there will be times during the quarter or whatever period we're talking when you will be making choice. So it's good to set up the ground rules now and be clear about it, because then you can tell them, hey, this is a higher priority. We agreed on that. That's what I'm doing. You don't have to figure out at that time when you need to be actually doing stuff. Oh, should I be doing this or should I be doing that? This is higher priority. If the decision was made at the end of last month, it's much more effective that way.
Yeah. So this is about consciously choosing what to do, but also consciously choosing what not to do, or what not to do yet.
Yeah. What not to do during the same time or with the same resources. Like, think of time the same way as you think about money, right? Like, we can buy only one of these two things. Which one is more important? Can't have half of each, right? Exactly the same thing. That's why this is a diamond card. Time, money, same thing.